Good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar, New Trends, Don't React, Prepare, brought to you by the IABC Heritage Region. I'm Heather Onorati, Communications Specialist for the region. In case you aren't already familiar with the International Association of Business Communicators, here is a little background. IABC serves professionals who work in internal and external communication, as well as public relations and related disciplines throughout the world. We also have programs for students. Our heritage region encompasses 17 states and Washington, D.C. As you can see, IABC offers a range of opportunities to learn, give back, and forge meaningful professional relationships. Today, our presenter, Joe Bobbey, will share some of the new trends in communications that the IABC Trend Watch Committee has identified and the impact these will have on our field. Joe Bobbey is a member of the IABC Trend Watch Committee and Catalyst Subcommittee and a board member of the Greater Cincinnati Chapter. He began his career in corporate communications in the electric utility and health insurance industries. His focus has included internal communications, media relations, and issues management. Joe recently retired as a change management consultant with a focus on technology and systems adoption. Before we begin, we have a couple of housekeeping notes. I'd like to introduce Amy Miller, IABC Heritage Region Tech Associate for this webinar. Amy will review a few quick points to help you gain the most from this experience.
Thank you, Heather. Hi, everyone. During the presentation, if you'd like to send us a question for discussion, please use the chat feature anytime. To help you think about possible questions, right now, we're showing some thoughts that may spur ideas for you. Also, today's webinar is being recorded. As a registered attendee, you will receive the following: a link to our very brief survey as you leave the webinar. Please take a moment to respond so we can keep making improvements. You'll also get an email with links to today's presentation PDF, a recording of the session, the survey in case you miss it on your way out of today's webinar, and a synopsis of the questions and answers from today's session. And now we'll turn it over to Joe to get us started.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this session. I want to start by saying that I want to give a big shout out to IABC. They've been really working hard to include trend watching as a big part of their strategy and professional development for people. It all started with their strategic plan, creating value for members, and this being one of them. The Trend Watch Task Force then began and came up with the top 6 trends report, which was some pretty detailed research, included interviews and sources that people can follow up with. And then it developed the Trend Watch Committee. This is a diverse global group of people. There are currently 11 members in 5 regions. And we've been creating materials that we can share with people to, help them become better trend trackers as well. We've included pocket trends. You may have seen in the Catalyst publication, a little more lengthy insight papers and more. And you'll see what I talk about one of the debates that we just put on. Before we begin, I'd like to start with taking a poll. We're going to present 10 categories of global issues that we think that everyone should be thinking about as business communicators. I'm going to pull the poll up now. Here we go. So you will see there are 10 choices. You may have to scroll down. We're going to ask you to pick 2 of them. Okay. We're seeing some consistency here. Good. And I think we're winding down in the responses. So for now, I'm going to end the poll and I will share the results. Okay, I hope everyone can see the poll. It looks like changing workplace is the top concern of everyone, with 55% picking that one. Some of the other top: trust and credibility, healthcare, mental health, DEI, and climate change. Very interesting, very interesting. Thank you. This is helpful, and hopefully you can see how you might align with others and where their priorities are as well. Again, thank you all for participating. Okay, so let me begin. I want to talk to you about things done so far by the Trend Watch Committee. Now, there are some things that we've already published and made available. You may have seen some of them, but I want to talk a little bit about all of them. And what we're trying to do is, make sure we're looking out there at what's happening, and then more importantly, sharing it with all IABC members. So let's start with the first one. Say hello to the content creator generation. And that is primarily Gen Z. We're starting to redefine our audiences by looking at them as more equal partners in communication. And I'll explain that in that we are more used to people sharing, retweeting content that's already on. But with the coming of TikTok, and sure to be more coming down the road, they're becoming much more active users in that they are creating content. You see there, a little more than 80% of people on TikTok have posted their videos. This is opposed to Twitter, for example, where about 10% of users have posted about 80% of the tweets. So there's a big difference. People are getting much more active, and right now using TikTok to do so. So these Generation Z people are getting more prominent, getting more active, and they're entering the workforce. But it also means for us, we can expect to see a declining control over our message, especially where a lot of these posters on TikTok might be taking their views of our products and our services. One thing we can do is to, take a special look at them and try to build mutually beneficial relationships. Things from a tactical level is even providing toolkits or playbooks that they can use if they want to talk about our products and services. Another one, employees want to have a voice. So this is very interesting. Hashtag show us your leave began fairly recently as a result of people having less access to family leave. As you may know, in the US, there was a bill to support family leave financially, and that failed. And as a result of that, or related to that, more people wanted to talk about the challenges they had. So this hashtag began getting a lot of use with people, again, showing the difficulties they're having as a result of not having paid family leave. And with COVID and so forth, that became a very tough issue. But the bigger picture is that we're seeing employees want more flexibility in creating culture. Okay, they want to become more active. They want their voices known. And here's a good example. They're wanting more globally inclusive holiday policies. Who are the other countries that are part of our country, part of our stakeholders? What are the other cultures? What are the other beliefs that we need to think about when we talk about time off? And that's just one aspect, and it goes much more into DEI and other things. But as communicators, we want to make sure that we have some input, because we can help to drive the change, being more inclusive, and certainly talk about it and share information. Whoops, sorry. The third one, risk mitigation or value creation. How do we think about in terms of reputation management? How up till now, we've been doing a lot of risk mitigation, making sure that bad things that happen don't injure their company's reputation. But there's more of a move to how do we measure the value of reputation and think of it as a corporate asset. Things that we can help with is, again, knowing the expectations of stakeholders. What do they expect from us that affects our reputation? Helping ensure the integrity of spokespeople that we have. And then finally, making sure that we are building our own business acumen to have a better view, more flexibility, more agility on what affects our reputation and how we can help improve it. Also, there is a position of Chief Reputation Officer that's beginning to take hold in companies. It really would behoove us to make sure we have a good reputation, a good relationship with that Chief Reputation Officer. And if there isn't one in your organization, I think we can find a reasonable proxy, someone who is involved with reputation and especially has influence, is positive, is transparent, and has a good message to tell. Okay. Another topic that we've been looking at is about rising to the challenge of science communication in the digital age. And, we are finding out that with the COVID pandemic, science communications really came to the spotlight. And it's not so much a specialized thing with us. More internal communicators becoming science communicators. And look at beyond COVID, natural disasters, how they're affecting our business, how they're affecting our workforce, and how we have to deal with what happens as a result. There's mental health and other wellness topics that are becoming more technical, and yet we can help get that information out. And then finally, cyber attacks is another example. And there are many more, but as you can see, things are getting more about technical information and science information. And that's all coming, into our realm, our roles, and how can we make the information exchange much better? 3 key things: trust, credibility, and consistency. And again, in the digital age, we have to get away a little bit from just focusing on open rates and views, but how much are we telling people that they need to know? We want to make sure we keep to the facts. We want to explain why things change. We saw that with COVID. As the science continued to learn more and more, there were some changes in direction, but that's natural. That's how science works. And we want to provide clear calls to action, not just saying what to do, but why. Why is it important? Designing the communications professional of the future. This is one of the longer papers that was produced, and I'm just going to share a part of it. There are 5 things that were identified to help us becoming more professional in the coming years. We all want to become more T-shaped. Some of you already are, but again, think about it. Being a T-shaped professional starts with that vertical part of the T. That's the depth of the particular skills you have, your area of expertise, what you're doing, what your role is. But the horizontal line is how we need to think about more globally in the company. How can we collaborate, reach out, understand more across more and more disciplines within our company? Learn how to learn fast. That's having more of a growth mindset. And it's not just about learning, the tactics and what we need to do, but learning the fundamentals, because having a greater understanding of different parts of the business, of our profession and so forth, why we do things the way we do them, helps us to be more agile, to react better to changes and so forth. Kind of similar thought from a business master's to business mastery. The example given in the paper was about, if you're taking an MBA, maybe you're doing a lot of looking at case studies, what other businesses did in various situations. But business mastery means having a greater understanding of how your company does business and not just the products. Take a look at the finance side of it. Understand the supply chain and how that affects your business, and so on. Creativity and tactical empathy. This is important to make sure we help get through all the noise out there and maintain good, strong connections with our audiences, our stakeholders. Finally, moral reasoning. We all have the opportunity to help the company and ourselves become more of a social consciousness of the company. All of these have kind of a theme here about, we have an opportunity to drive more human connection and certainly tackle the many challenges that are coming. And these 5 points kind of all help us get there. Finally, there was a great virtual debate that the committee put together. We had no idea at the beginning we were going to do this, but as we were talking about this topic, it just seemed to make sense. Hey, let's have a virtual debate. Should CEOs speak out on social issues? It was very well received, very lively, a lot of talk, not just between the 2 speakers taking either side, but also from the participants. It's hard, believe me, I tried. It's hard to get a debate into a slide. So what I did was just take just a few points I wanted to share with all of you. Again, as part of the resources that you'll be seeing. On the for side, an important point that was made and discussed quite a bit was, companies are part of the community. And if we take, genuine, authentic stands on those issues affecting those communities, we can help maybe find solutions, especially, as it affects our products and services. However, on the flip side of that, the point was, hey, it's not about the words that our CEOs say. It's about the deeds of the company. What are we doing? Are we working in a way that is beneficial to the community? Also, hey, is this an opportunity for us to involve champions of the positions and other voices and make those connections with our stakeholder groups? But one point that was discussed a lot, agreed by both sides, is, hey, this is a minefield, risks and consequences. No matter what position you're going to take, there can be a downside. One of the best ways to prepare for that is listen to both sides of the issue, and again, listen with empathy and act on that with transparency, authenticity, consistency. We want to be genuine, we want to be civil, and we want to be prepared. With that, I want to mention there was a survey done by IABC April of 2021, and it was about many aspects of communications. But when they asked about what are the concerns that communication professionals have, just want to spend a little time to dwell on these, because I think they're helpful for us to think about them. How can we prepare for them? How will they affect us? Some of the major challenges are going to be the distracted audience. Social media, yes, but also just being overtaxed, having a lot of work to do. And as you know, with COVID and so forth, the way the challenges are appearing with our, let's say, we have more difficulty hiring people, have more difficulty retaining people. There's the so-called resignation, the Great Resignation, people who left during the pandemic. The speed of change is only going to get faster. It's going to keep happening. We need to be prepared for that. But also lack of resources. How do we get it all in? How do we become more efficient, more effective? How do we prioritize what we're working on? Some of the skills that were suggested by the people in the survey. The top ones, everything is digital. And I think we've been doing a good job as a profession to prepare, but again, keep watching. And I'm going to address a little bit what we can do to prepare. Measurements, very important. I mentioned the measuring the value of reputation and so forth, but measurement within our company, how effective we are, how effective our communications are. And change management. I'm a change management consultant, retired, but I've noticed that it's been a kind of a discipline on its own, but more and more communication professionals are seeing how they are a vital part of change management within a company. Even IABC, you'll see more topics in webinars, topics in the World Conference, and so forth. So those are some of the hot topics, let's say, that were part of that survey. How do we prepare? How do we become really good trend trackers? First of all, read to understand. And it's not just, again, about things that interest you. Read to understand what's happening out there globally, in the broader business world, just in general. Where are you seeing things happening that maybe don't affect you now, but may down the road? If a particular, say, product is being recalled, so forth, will people question your product if it's similar, for example? Question, especially your leadership in the company. What are they thinking about? What do they see coming down the road that both they should be preparing for and you can support them by preparing for? And then again, listen to your stakeholders. What are they saying? What are their concerns? Even if you're doing any kind of stakeholder research, focus groups, surveys, whatever, throw in some questions about, what concerns do you have? What do you see coming down the road? With that, and I know I went through this kind of quickly, I'm hoping that we have some good conversation. Want to talk about your concerns. What trends will be affecting you in the coming years? As mentioned before, there are things to think about. I have 4 questions here. I really want to hear, and it's not just questions, if we want to address as many as we can, but also just throw out comments. If you're reacting to anything I've said so far, if you feel there are things that you want to share, I'd like to know, what specific trends or changes will affect you and your communication teams that will affect you over the next year or two. And also, what trends do you feel you need to learn more about? Because we want to take that information and share it back with you. Maybe do some of the research and, bring everyone together to have a little more awareness of the trends coming up. Oops. With that,
I'm going to jump in, Joe. That this is really interesting insight, and we did have some comments and questions popping up in the chat as you were talking. So I'll go ahead and I sort of kind of grouped some things. I'm going to jump back quickly to your slide about the CEOs speaking out because there were several comments there. One was that debate regarding the CEOs speaking out on the IABC Hub, and do you see the ability to debate virtually or discuss trends and recommendations on the Hub as a significant benefit of IABC membership? What are your thoughts?
Great question. It was not on the Hub, but we are starting to look at the Hub more as an additional resource, and that did come up. I think there's a great possibility that those will be available down the road for people to take part in some kind of a streaming fashion, if maybe not live, but to share information back and forth. That particular debate, since this was the first, it was kind of an aha moment just because of the topic that, hey, this would be a great debate. It is available. It'll be in one of the resource links that I have for you. But thank you. That's kind of in line where we were thinking, and I'm glad you brought it up because it just reinforces that we should take a very good look at start using the Hub more actively down the road.
Yeah, somebody else had asked, how do people find out and participate in these conversations? So I think there's interest there for that. So that might be something that once we figure out, we can, send out to everybody, let everybody know how that's working and when those things are available. Another question related to that, social issues. One thing my client is facing now in healthcare is that there are risks to staying silent, not only in speaking up. How can companies assess these risks and accurately identify opportunities to grow value to community and or brand reputation? Because it can't just be about avoiding the risks of making a statement.
Okay, yes, that is the huge challenge that we learned with COVID. Basically, again, going back to principles of facts, consistency, compassion, empathy, and being able to respond, because you're going to have your internal communications loops, email, if you track comments from people on the various tools that we have in our companies, just be prepared to respond and understand that, yes, there are going to be things that people don't agree with. There are going to be people you will not be able to convince, but having the facts, on your side and having a free, access to information will be your 2 best tools. Again, you're not going to please everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another comment. I would flip this conversation. I think you started with global and business trends, and these are the trends. For example, science writing fluency is the strategy tactic, but climate change on top of globalization is the trend. Also, changing and hybrid workplaces are the trend, and the strategy is how companies rethink remote or rethink corporate communications, especially internal, as more people are remote and independent at all layers of a business. Just a
Okay.
comment.
Well, yes, I mean, there are things that are global. And when, the first poll was meant to, I would have loved to break it down into many, many different trends or many different topics, but I couldn't. So I was kind of lumping things as much as I could. You're right, though. I mean, there are, for example, the DEI. Some people expanded that to be IDEA, for example, accessibility. So that's another piece of that. There are, it's the trends weren't meant to be all global or all specific. We're going to be looking as a committee to both. There's a paper being put together now, for example, about responsible investments, ESG concerns, environment, societal, and governance concerns for investors. And we will get into that a lot more as a global, widespread trend that we're watching, but climate change is a piece of that. It's all going to be based on where are people thinking, what are they thinking about, and how can we respond to those? What's particular to your company? One of the things that we've talked about as a committee, for example, and it did come up in debate, is environmental issues, climate change. You may be doing a great product that is less energy efficient, but if the process to create that product, the manufacturing process, the supply chain process is very harmful, or for example, using child labor and so forth, then you have to look at the bigger picture in the company. So I think your view of that has to be changing, broad, specific. There will be different things at different times that people are looking at. And I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah, I think you did. She said she's looking forward to the ESG and glad you're looking at the broader trends and how communications can respond. So I think you addressed that well. Another comment here, a question, are companies using the ability to continue working remotely or the ability to choose where they work as part of recruiting efforts to overcome effects of the Great Resignation? Have you seen this?
We have seen that they are using that, but it's interesting. A lot of companies are still making decisions about, for example, the hybrid skill. How much time are you going to spend in the office? How much time can you spend at home? Boy, there's a range. There is no consistency, no consensus on where that is right now. And you also have to think about, there are a lot of positions of your workforce who can't work at home. They have to be customer facing, they have to be on the manufacturing line and so forth. So I think there's still more to be seen, and we're starting to get some feedback. There are some studies out there that are looking at it. We're going to be looking at that separately. I haven't spent much time on that specifically right now, but I hate to say it, but the jury is still out.
I
As
think that
Go ahead.
I was just going to add, I think that is maybe a trend worth noting. Somebody else mentioned that, the severe shortage of talent, that they're seeing a lot of job openings in PR. So, maybe as a way to address that, that trend. That might be something.
Yes, yes. And the good news on that side, though, is employment has really been moving up.
Mhm.
If you've watched the statistics. So hopefully we're starting to make some fixes there. But again, it's not just about where you're working, but let's look at ESG again. People are finding this is an opportunity to say, hey, I don't like what that company's doing. I want to leave because I like what that company's doing. And so company A is seeing the great resignation where company B is saying, hey, this is what people want, and we will include this in our hiring process and communications and how we talk about the company.
Mhm. And another comment related to that is somebody asked, have you heard that companies are adding more floating holidays that employees can use as desired as part of efforts to promote inclusivity?
So far in what we've done, we've seen some of that. I
Okay.
can't quote you statistics, and I should have given a qualifier at the beginning. I'm not an expert on all trends right now, but that's why we have a committee of many people who are working on these things. So I can't say I can address that directly. Sorry.
Okay. Another comment here. Globally, there is increasing support for authoritarian government. What does this mean for the future of transparent communication in the society at large and in global organizations and businesses?
That's a tough one. That kind of goes along with the same issues you see in should CEOs comment about various issues.
Mhm.
I don't think I don't think we've seen the end of this and what it means. In fact, I'm going to ask you, and I'm not going to be able to see all of it, but because I'm not actually looking at the chat right now, because Heather and Amy are helping me with that. But after the program, I would love you to throw in some comments. All of you, what are your thoughts, as things get more politicized, more divisive and so forth? How can we do better jobs of mitigating the risks of all of that? How do we deal with the differences, opinions that are becoming much more divided, and the participants who are becoming much more vocal and unfortunately active as well?
Mhm.
I'm not going to take a position on either side of that, but I would just love to take a look at your comments, and I'll compile those when we do the summary of the chat following the meeting.
Yeah, if anybody has thoughts, you can just toss them in the chat and we can compile those for afterwards. You can see what we have.
I will add this though. There are some things going on that I think are helpful lessons now as specific examples. For example, what happened with Disney and the legislation in Florida and the response to Disney's position on that. Again, think of how you might have handled that. And then also don't, think about your perspective. What would have been the best position for Disney to take, knowing what you know now?
Interesting. So going back to your slide on risk mitigation or value creation, somebody asked, how would CRO be different from CCO?
Because, well, what we're seeing so far is CCO is more about how do we get the word out. CRO would be more involved in what are we doing as a company. Again, I mentioned the supply chain issue and so forth. What are they doing to change that process in the company versus how we communicate about it?
Joe, can you quickly define CCO and CRO? What do those stand for the attendees?
Oh, I'm sorry. CCO, Chief Communication Officer, and CRO was the Chief Reputation Officer.
Reputation officer. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I had forgotten myself and somebody just asked and I thought, yep, that's a good point. Let's define.
Yeah, so the CRO maybe have a much closer tie to the operations of the company or the finances of the company. They're trying to make whatever corrections they need to be a better company, being more responsible, where the CCO is working with them because, hey, we're getting this kind of feedback. These are the problems we need to address. And then on the other side of that is, as the company works to build a better reputation, let's share that. Let's show how we're trying to be more responsible.
Okay, all right. And somebody also just points out that there's a CRO that's a chief risk officer also, just as a
Oh,
differentiator. So
good point.
yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so COVID. I've noticed lots of COVID fatigue, very little media coverage on the fourth booster. How can we get more coverage?
Do you, but it's tough because if you're talking about coverage in the media, for example, I mean, CDC, for example, follow the CDC. They're kind of recognized as, the leading guidelight on what's happening with COVID. If you're not seeing coverage in the media, there's not a lot you might be able to do unless you're, Pfizer or Moderna or whatever. But you certainly can share information. I mean, I've seen a lot of companies say, hey, here's what the CDC is recommending. Our healthcare covers additional boosters, things like that. I think you have to look outside for that information and then share it internally.
Yeah.
But as far as, how do we increase coverage? If you're talking as far as media coverage, not a lot you can do.
Yeah.
Unless you come up, I'll tell you what, I mean, if you come up with successful processes in your company or your organization, share that through your PR chain.
I have, and this question, how could I have prepared ahead of time for a situation like COVID? And that's the question. I'm assuming it's, maybe from the standpoint of how could I have prepared for, how I communicate to, my company about this situation? Like, is there ways in which we could have had some sort of preparation for a situation like this? Or we could prepare in the future?
Yeah, it was tough at the beginning because right at the beginning, there was a lot of question, how serious is this? We didn't know in March of 2020 that, in 2 years, we'd have 1 million people die of it in the US alone. So again, going back to those 3 points I shared about read, question, and listen. Maybe you won't have all the answers at the beginning, but be open to the information. Don't be misled by bad information, and share what you can. And you're going to have to work with HR. You're going to have to work with your legal group on what you can say or you can't say. But I think being proactive in looking for the information, listening to what people are saying, and then how do I communicate this within?
Yeah, I had, I think one final comment here coming in, with and this seems to be just a comment, with the latest in mass shootings, I plead with companies to take on safety and security for members of our communities overall. I think this, that came in around you mentioning like trends that people are seeing or comments, just putting things out there for discussion. So, and that's important, So, somebody's saying focus on what your key message is for your customers or stakeholders, then communicate directly with them. Going back to the COVID boosters and COVID preparation. So let's see, one person also asked if CROs actually exist.
Google it. I'm sorry, I don't have statistics on how many companies are doing that. We've just have been seeing that position is beginning to be instilled. And I wish I had a list of companies where we've seen them. I don't, unfortunately. But check. For example, on the ESG, the paper that be coming out, I'm one of the authors of that. We wanted to see, okay, should we as communicators be thinking of that? Looked at LinkedIn, typed in ESG communication, and a couple thousand positions came right up. Now they're not all, let's say, the same level, maybe not the same concentration in that area, but I wouldn't have known that people are looking specifically for communicators to help them with that.
No, but you're right. And new positions could be emerging given, the circumstances of our environment now. So that it's an interesting thing to take note of, to see what new titles are coming out of, all of this whole circumstance, and, what our company's looking at is important to focus on and create specialized areas for. We have another comment that says we need to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, one of the learnings I personally had was, again, I mentioned I'm not an expert at all, although I have been, looking at various groups who talked about trends and various speakers. What we're doing is we're saying, hey, here's what people are concerned about. Here's what people are talking about. We need to learn about it and then share what we've learned. And in the links that you'll see, if you go to those links, a lot of them have resource lists. Resource lists. That's hard to say. Of where you can find further information, quotes, facts, information we bring in includes references where you can find them. A lot of links again to find more information on that. So we want to be a conduit of information that will help all business communicators be better trend trackers.
Yeah. And so this is a final comment here. I think we're running out of time, but just going back to, the pandemic, mass shootings in general, we have a comment that says we just need to broaden our crisis communication plans to include diseases, government actions, et cetera, work across the organization to uncover emerging issues that could generate a crisis. So.
Oh, bless you, whoever made that comment. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, thank you, Joe. I think this was really a good session. Got a lot of good conversation generated. I think in a session like this next time, maybe we can figure out how to unmute everybody so that more voices can pop up into the discussion rather than mine. But I'm going to hand it over to Amy right now to wrap it up for everybody.
Joe, did you want to go ahead and share your resources?
Oh, yes, I do. Thank you. So these are the 6 pieces that came out of those, for the 6 trends that I went through. I just gave you a quick look. Pocket trends are very quick reads, 2-3 minute reads, but they do pack a lot of useful information. The insight paper is a little bit longer, more research, more references, and places you can go for more information. And then the virtual betas, the link for members to get access to that. And finally, I also had some other, prior trend resources, things that were published, just before the Trend Watch Committee got going. The first one I really recommend. Well, a lot of these are quick reads. Encourage you to spend some time with that full report of 6 trends to watch in 2021 and beyond. And you'll see some of the other topics that we have here. Thank you.
And I just
Joe,
want to say that, yes, we will, as somebody did ask about the resources, everything's going to be shared after following the webinar. I'm not sure if we saw that come in, but I just wanted to say that so everybody hears. We'll share all of this and you'll have all these links as well.
Yeah, they'll be with the slides. You'll be getting a PDF of the slides.
well, Joe, thanks for sharing that very rich set of resources along with all of your insights. And as Heather just mentioned, we will definitely include those resource links when we email everyone the post-webinar materials over the next few days. And now we want to just make sure everyone's aware of a few quick notes. If you have further questions for Joe, you can contact him at the email address shown on the slide. Please do complete the participant survey. It will open when you exit the webinar. Watch your email for details on our upcoming Heritage Region webinars, which will focus on volunteer positions available and certification requirements. If you would like to present a future webinar, please email the IABC Heritage Region using the contact information shown on the slide. And you can learn more about IABC membership benefits at iabc.com/membership. Thank you again for joining us today and have a wonderful afternoon.